Hello, my name is Joseph Lyon, and this is my course paper that I did. I did it on problem-oriented policing and the effectiveness of it. I chose this one mainly because we talked about it in class a couple weeks ago, and when we talked about it, I didn't really know much about the topic beforehand, and discussing it really got me interested about it because I didn't really know like the ins and outs of how law enforcement does problem oriented policing and like how they actually manage that when they're out in the field. So I really wanted to take a deep dive at it because I felt like something like that, if it corrects some of the kinks that it probably has, because not every policy is perfect, it could be even more useful in the future for law enforcement. Um, I thought this was important because I looked up what problem-oriented policing was to get a better understanding of it. It basically meant that it was diagnosing and solving problems that are increasing crime risk, usually in areas that are seeing comparatively high levels of crime, like basically hotspots, so to speak. It is challenging in that agencies need to diagnose and solve these crimes with a wide range of crime-causing problems. So, like, what are these problems coming up in certain areas? Why is this happening in these certain areas? And they're trying to figure out what they need to do to stop that from growing even larger in different communities that are around it. Um, so that's why I thought that was important to look up. And now we'll get into the bulk of the paper. I mentioned that police focus on certain issues in the specific community already. There are those who believe that there is a future of criminal justice. There's a future to this policy in criminal justice. That it's going to be effective for as many years as it possibly can be, and some think that this is just wasting police's time. Like, you're just wasting resources. This isn't going to do anything. This is going to stop the real problem of figuring out why these crimes happen in these certain areas. I would say that I do think that this does have a lot of good effect in their communities. And we'll go into that with the certain studies that I was able to find during my research. Let me find a good study here. Let's see. Ah, sweet. Okay. So this one is about the California Highway Patrol and the study that they did with problem-oriented policing. They had a problem with a specific road of highway that that the problem they kept having was there was so many injuries and fatalities happening in that road compared to others, and in the past 3 years there was a stretch of 48 people dying in that stretch of road. It was really insane. So what they did was they attached problem-oriented policing to slow down the number of accidents, and how they did that was they just enforced heavier traffic laws in that specific stretch of highway. This was to prevent all these deaths and injuries from occurring. And after a while, and also it imposed bigger fines for the people who violated traffic laws. So it basically gave more incentive for people to, not speed, not do anything reckless along the stretch of highway, and it actually led to a decrease in the amount of deaths in the next few years. Another example was the Chula Vista Police Department. It used problem-oriented policing in their community with burglary rates. They were located in high residential areas in new housing construction zones. The department responded by interviewing the victims and the burglars that had been caught. They helped them assess the area, get a better feel of like what was going on, and also gave the thought process of what the burglars were thinking when they were coming and robbing these places. And with increased efforts, it would result in a decrease in burglaries that happen in those areas on an annual basis. Another big example of problem-oriented policing being a positive for the community is this one study that the Rogers County Police Department had done. They had an analysis that 37 trailers had been stolen in one calendar year, and they were only able to find 3 of them. So the recovery rate was really poor. They used a radio frequency identification that put a microchip into the trailers, where they can be registered in an official database. This was for new trailers that they started to make after a while. and for these people who had to replace their old ones. And this was done to make sure that if they had been stolen again, they were going to have a much bigger success rate in recovering them and maybe finding the person who did it. As a result of them putting this microchip into these trailers where it was on the database, this technique effectively wiped out the trailer theft that happened in Rogers County. In a 2-year span, only one trailer got stolen, and that was because the owner had not registered with the new program that they had just implemented. The entire process that they undertook to address this problem, it completely negated what was going on in this community. So that's the research that I was able to find about problem-oriented policing. Different types of problems that each police department had to deal with. I thought the Rogers County one was probably the most interesting because I didn't really think that trailers would get stolen that often, but this was an older study, so it kind of makes sense. But I couldn't believe how in just a few years span they were able to completely negate all the theft that they had, from 37 to only one, and that was just because the dude basically just forgot to put his trailer in the database. Whether he knew that or not, the study didn't clarify for that. But looking at the research, looking at what all problem-oriented policing offers for communities and the policy itself, I'm led to believe that this is going to be a betterment for the communities overall. I think this policy is good. I feel like if you're going to make it better, I feel like you need to put more resources and more time and effort into into this type of policing. Not everyone's going to be on board with it. Some people are going to still think we're wasting our time. This isn't going to do anything. Police need to be focusing somewhere else. This isn't getting any jobs done. I think these studies say otherwise. I feel that if they put a spotlight on certain problems in certain communities, like, how are these drugs getting into these communities? Or what if there is a gun problem in certain communities? How are these kids getting guns? How are these gangs getting guns into the community? And also, I feel like the one drawback to problem-oriented policing that needs to be addressed in the future is how are they going to do when the problem that they have is effectively limited in that community, but all it does is just move away to different communities that are around it. It disperses out, and now these different communities that didn't have this problem now have it. And I think that's the biggest issue I think problem-oriented policing will have in the future. But I think it can be counteracted if law enforcement is able to make that effort into really putting in all their resources into this. Because I think what the research shows that when they do take the time and the effort, there is good results. Some might not effectively eliminate all crime in the future, but it does a huge job in completely negating it and having lower results over time. So it's a long process, and that's also another drawback, you could say, that it's not quick enough. But I would argue that certain policies, they'll take as long as they need to. If it ends up working, I think that's what matters in the end. So, and this is why I think that problem-oriented policing is so important for the future of law enforcement.